Welcome, detectives, to a new episode of Global Crime Files. Today we'll be talking about the case of Blaze Bernstein, a brilliant 19-year-old student whose life was tragically cut short. Let's dive into the investigation and uncover the details behind this shocking crime.
Yeah, that's exactly what we need to do in this deep dive. We're really focused on putting together the facts around this awful crime and then analyzing the relentless investigation that came after. And we definitely need to scrutinize those highly charged legal arguments, the ones that dominated the courtroom for, 6 years? Specifically, we've got to understand how the evidence led to applying those hate crime enhancements. That was critical. It basically redefined the whole motive and ultimately the verdict.
It really did.
Yeah.
And when you first look at the basic facts of this case, the sheer brutality just jumps out at you. We're talking about Blaze Bernstein. He was only 19, a sophomore at the University of Pennsylvania, UPenn. And he was killed back in January 2018. Not in some rough area, but in Lake Forest, California.
Seems like a peaceful suburb, right?
Right.
The person who did it, a former high school acquaintance, Samuel Woodward. He was 20 at the time.
And the detail that just grabbed everyone's attention, the really shocking part,
Yeah.
Blaze was stabbed 28 times.
28. It's horrific.
It is. And authorities, almost right away, they recognized this wasn't just some random act of violence. They pretty quickly declared it a hate crime.
That declaration, so early on, really set the tone for everything that followed.
Absolutely. It was an act of just extreme targeted violence. It completely shattered the peace in Orange County. And it forced the community and eventually, the courts to face this reality of organized, really virulent extremism just operating under the surface, hidden in plain sight almost. Okay, so before we get deeper into the crime itself, let's talk about Blaze. To really understand the tragedy, you have to understand the person, the potential that was just extinguished. Blaze Bernstein, born April 27, 1998, in South Orange County. His parents were Gideon Bernstein, an equity partner, and Jean Pepper, who was a former lawyer. They described a really supportive, loving home.
And Blaze was clearly thriving in that environment. He graduated from the Orange County School of the Arts OCSA, which is quite renowned. That tells you a lot about his creative side right there. And like you said, at the time he was murdered, he was a sophomore at UPenn, an Ivy League school, high achiever.
Yeah, and the way his family described him, it's really striking. They use words like magical, even a unicorn, highlighting his, magnificent creativity. He was apparently a budding chef, loved cooking.
Yes.
A creative writer, but he was also seriously thinking about maybe going to medicine.
Wow, quite a range.
Right. And he was openly gay and also Jewish. Identities his parents fully supported, and they were, central to the vibrant life he was building.
And that openness, that embracing of who he was, his identity, his potential, it creates such a stark contrast with the person who took his life. That identity, being gay and Jewish, it became the absolute core of the legal case later on. The prosecution basically had to prove he was targeted specifically because of who he was.
Such a loss. Okay, now let's shift focus to Samuel Woodward, the perpetrator. He was 20, born nearby in Newport Beach. And he actually attended OCSA, too, for a while. He overlapped with Blaze there. But his experience at the school sounds like it was, vastly different.
Yeah, the sources, they bring up a really critical detail about Woodward's time there. He was actually pulled out of OCSA.
Pulled out.
During his junior year, by his father. And the reason, multiple reports, complaints about Woodward being aggressively homophobic towards gay students there.
Wow, so this wasn't something that just developed later. This prejudice was documented years before the murder.
Exactly. It was known, it was recognized. After leaving OCSA, he finished high school at Corona Del Mar High, and then he did attend Cal State Channel Islands for a bit, but didn't really stick with it.
And his social interactions, or lack thereof, kind of paint a picture too, don't they?
They do. People who shared dorms with him at Channel Islands said he wasn't sociable at all, very withdrawn.
And some high school peers, they gave an even clearer sense of his reputation back then.
Right. A friend of Blaze's, actually, Ray Arofsky, remembered Woodward as being very quiet, very withdrawn, but also having this reputation even then for being, quote, racist, homophobic, sexist.
So you see this dynamic building early on. Blaze, brilliant, open, supported, thriving, versus Woodward, who seems isolated, resentful, and already showing signs of this documented aggressive homophobia that even got him removed from the art school.
Yeah, and the sources really suggest that this resentment, this sort of deeply ingrained prejudice, it just created the perfect fertile ground for the radicalization that came later.
Right.
which tragically is what brought their paths back together in the worst possible way.
It definitely sets up a chilling backdrop. Woodward's withdrawal, the documented hate, his later radicalization. It all becomes critical when you try to piece together how and why he sought out Blaze. Okay, so let's move to the events of that night and the days that followed. The story takes a truly terrifying turn when Blaze was home from UPenn for winter break. He's back at Lake Forest. It's late on January 2nd, 2018, maybe around 11 p.m. And Blaze makes this decision. He secretly leaves his parents' house. That was the last time they knew he was safe.
Right. And initially, the first few hours, it's probably just normal parental worry. Maybe he stayed out late.
Sure.
But the real fear, the alarm bells, they started ringing the next day, January 3rd. Blaze had a dental appointment with his mom, and he missed it.
Which was totally unlike him.
Completely out of character. So his parents rush home, and that's when they find everything still there. His wallet, keys, retainers, even his glasses. He needed those glasses.
Yeah.
That immediately changes everything from he's out late to this is a serious emergency.
So the search kicks off, frantically.
Mm-hmm.
And his parents, with some help from friends, they do what anyone would do. Now they check his digital footprint.
Mm-hmm.
His phone, his apps, and it pays off right away. They get into his Snapchat, and there it is, the first big clue. A conversation showing Blaze sent his home address to a name they didn't recognize, Sam Woodward. Just a seeming stranger to them at that point.
And they acted fast. Blaze's dad, Gideon Bernstein, he messaged Woodward, then Woodward calls back. And crucially, the Bernsteins had the presence of mind to record that entire phone call. That recording became absolutely central later for the prosecution.
What was Woodward's story on that call?
Well, it was suspicious right from the get-go. He admitted picking Blaze up, around 11 p.m. Said he drove him to Borrego Park, which was nearby. But then Woodward claimed Blaze immediately said he was meeting some other friend, got out, walked down a path, and just vanished into the darkness. That was his phrase.
Vanished into the darkness. I mean, come on. Woodward even claimed he yelled out, "Blaze, Blaze," but saw nothing.
That was his story.
It just raises so many red flags immediately, doesn't it? Why would an Ivy League student, home on break, go to a dark park at 11 p.m. to meet some unknown friend and leave his wallet, his keys, his glasses behind? It just didn't fit Blaze at all.
Exactly. That lie about him just vanishing, it felt pretty transparent even then. But at that point, the main focus was still trying to find a missing person. By January 5th, though, the search effort had become massive. We're talking professional search and rescue teams, helicopters overhead, and just this incredible community response. Thousands of flyers being handed out by volunteers, by people from Blaze's synagogue.
It really shows how seriously the community took it, especially in a place like Lake Forest, which is generally seen as very safe.
Definitely underscored the gravity of the situation.
But the search dragged on. 8 agonizing days for the family and everyone looking. Hope must have been fading with every hour.
And then, January 10th. Back in Borrego Park, that's when the search reached its tragic end. The sources mention this really heartbreaking detail about the weather playing a role.
How so?
Well, the body was deliberately hidden, buried under a big tree branch, covered with a mound of dirt. A clear attempt to conceal the crime.
Yeah.
But it had been pouring rain the night before, and that rain apparently washed away just enough of the dirt and debris that a detective spotted something. It was the rain that partly uncovered Blaze's face, leading them to find his body.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And the examination afterwards revealed the absolute horror of the attack. Blaze had been stabbed 28 times. That number itself just screams rage, hatred.
It's devastating. So with Blaze's body found, the investigation immediately zeroed in on Samuel Woodward. 3 days later, January 13th, 2018, police arrested him as he was pulling out of his driveway in Newport Beach. The focus shifted instantly from missing person to building a murder case.
And the forensic evidence started coming in, creating that hard link. Investigators found blood in Woodward's car on the headliner, and crucially, it belonged to both Blaze and Woodward. That strongly suggested a violent struggle happened right there in the car.
Yeah.
And later they found a knife at Woodward's house. Tests confirmed it had Blaze's blood on it.
So the physical evidence was pretty solid connecting him to the scene, the violence.
Absolutely. The defense would eventually admit he did the killing, but this forensic evidence really cemented his physical role early on.
But like you said, the physical evidence, that's only part of it. The motive, that's what turned this into a major hate crime case getting national attention. And that came from digging into Woodward's digital life, right?
Yeah.
His connections.
Yes. His deep and frankly, terrifying involvement with a neo-Nazi terrorist group called the Atomwaffen Division.
Atomwaffen Division.
Yeah.
We need to unpack that a bit. This isn't just some online chat group, is it?
Not at all. You really need to understand this group. AWD, Atomwaffen Division, they're designated as a violent domestic extremist organization. Their ideology, it's nihilistic, it's accelerationist. Their stated goal is the total destruction of the current system, the liberal order. They literally talk about blowing up the world as it is.
To achieve what?
To create a white ethno-state, one explicitly without Jewish people, without LGBTQ plus individuals, without people of color. It's just pure violent hatred.
And Woodward wasn't just, like, reading their stuff online. He was in it.
Oh, he was deep in it, a dedicated member. There are photos of him wearing the group's skull mask, giving the Nazi salute. He even traveled quite a bit for the group, including a trip, kind of a pilgrimage, to Colorado to meet James Mason.
James Mason. Why is that significant?
That connection is really important if you want to grasp the depth of his radicalization. Mason wrote Siege.
Siege. I've heard of that. It's infamous, right?
Extremely. It's basically the handbook for accelerationist neo-Nazis. It lays out the strategy. Use violence, use terror to speed up the collapse of society. So Woodward wasn't just reading it. He was actively seeking out the source, absorbing this doctrine. And then he traveled to Texas to attend what they called a hate camp.
A hate camp? What on earth is that?
The sources describe it pretty bluntly. One-on-one training on how to be a violent extremist.
Training, like practical skills.
Seems like it. And reportedly, Woodward actually dropped out of Cal State Channel Islands specifically so he could engage more with these Atomwaffen activities.
Wow. That suggests a really conscious choice, a deliberate path towards violence, fueled by this extremist ideology.
And you see that ideological drive reflected in how the group reacted to Blaze's murder. When the news broke that Woodward, one of their own, had allegedly killed an openly gay and Jewish student, Atomwaffen members reportedly celebrated. Cheered, congratulated Woodward. They saw the murder as a jackpot, an ideological win for them. It's chilling.
That's deeply disturbing. And the prosecution found more evidence of this mindset in Woodward's own messages, right?
Yes, absolutely. Police reviewed his communications, his digital footprint, and they found messages he sent to his neo-Nazi buddies. In these messages, he actually wrote about how he was actively baiting gay men.
Baiting them, like luring them.
That's the implication. And even more disturbingly, he talked about a previous victim he had attacked.
A previous victim. So this might not have been the first time he targeted someone.
It suggests a potential pattern, a pattern of targeted violence specifically against the LGBTQ plus community. This directly contradicts any later claims by the defense that this was just a moment of panic or an impulsive act.
It points towards planning, towards a specific type of target.
Exactly. And then there was that social media post, probably the most visceral piece of digital evidence.
What was that?
Woodward posted a picture online, a picture of a knife, likely the murder weapon, and the text with it. Texting is boring, but murder isn't.
Murder isn't boring, posted with a picture of the knife.
Yeah.
That's incredibly brazen and chilling.
It really is. So if you put it all together, you've got the documented homophobia going way back to high school. You've got the deep dive into this violent neo-Nazi ideology with Atomwaffen, the specific training at hate camp, his own admission of baiting gay men, maybe even attacking someone before, and that horrific social media post.
Yeah.
It paints a really clear picture, doesn't it? Premeditated motive, rooted firmly in anti-gay and anti-Jewish hatred, long before he ever met Blaze in that park.
And the 28 stab wounds.
They become the physical proof, the manifestation of that intense, deep-seated hate.
It really shifts the understanding of the crime, doesn't it? From a straightforward, albeit brutal homicide to something more like ideological domestic terrorism intersecting with a local crime.
Precisely. And that complexity, that context, is what the Orange County legal system then had to spend years grappling with.
So let's get into that legal battle. The stakes for Samuel Woodward were obviously huge from the start. Initially, the charges were murder and using a deadly weapon. That carried, what, a maximum of 26 years?
That's right. But then came the decision based on that extremist motive we just discussed. In August 2018, the prosecution added the hate crime enhancements. This was the game changer.
Because Blaze was targeted for being gay, and later they added being Jewish as well, right?
Correct. Based on Woodward's known ideology targeting both groups. And in California, proving those enhancements true changes everything. It bumps the potential sentence way up mandatory life in prison without the possibility of parole. So the motive wasn't just part of the case, it became the entire legal fight.
But getting to that fight took an incredibly long time, 6.5 years from the crime to the trial starting. That must have been agony for the Bernstein family.
Unbearable. The sources point to a couple of major delays. First, understandably, the COVID-19 pandemic threw a wrench into court schedules everywhere.
Right, that affected everything.
But then there was another significant hurdle. In July 2022, serious questions were raised about Woodward's mental competence to even stand trial.
So proceedings were suspended.
They were, for a while. He was evaluated and eventually deemed competent later that year. But these delays just stretched out the suffering for the family immensely.
So when the trial finally got underway, what was the defense strategy? They admitted he killed Blaze, didn't they?
They did. The defense attorney basically conceded the unlawful killing. There was no real way around the physical evidence.
So their goal wasn't acquittal.
No. Their primary objective was twofold. First, they had to attack the idea of premeditation to try and get the charge reduced from first-degree murder. And second, they had to completely dismantle those hate crime enhancements because those carried the life without parole sentence. They argued vehemently it was not driven by homophobia or anti-Semitism.
Okay, so if they admit the killing but deny the hate motive and the premeditation, what alternative story were they trying to sell the jury?
They pivoted hard towards trying to establish grounds for voluntary manslaughter instead of murder.
Voluntary manslaughter, meaning it was intentional but not premeditated, done in the heat of passion.
Exactly. And to support this, they introduced two main arguments about Woodward himself. First, they argued he has Asperger's syndrome.
Okay. And how did they connect that?
They claimed it contributed to his significant social difficulties and, importantly, impaired his ability to correctly process social cues and perceive threats, kind of laying the groundwork for a panic reaction.
And the second argument?
They claimed he was deeply confused about his own sexual identity.
And that feeds right into their main narrative, doesn't it? The whole outing or provocation defense.
Precisely. This was the core of their attempt to lessen his culpability. They tried to flip the script entirely, basically painting Blaze, the victim, as the one who provoked the situation.
How did they argue that?
They claimed Woodward and Blaze had exchanged some flirtatious messages that they had matched on Tinder. Blaze apparently acknowledged being gay and had called Woodward hot. The defense argued Blaze was toying with Woodward. And then came the critical claim that Blaze threatened to out Woodward as potentially gay or curious to his family and community.
And Woodward himself testified about this.
He did. He claimed that night in the park, he sort of nodded off after they smoked some marijuana. He testified he woke up, saw his pants were unbuckled, and believed Blaze had just taken a compromising photo of his privates.
He believed Blaze took a photo.
That was his claim. He said this triggered an intense panic. The defense tied this panic directly to his fear of his father.
His father.
Yeah, they presented the father as deeply homophobic, someone who reportedly used awful slurs like sodomites for gay men.
So the defense argument was fear of being outed by this alleged photo to his homophobic father caused a sudden, irresistible panic, enough to qualify as heat of passion for manslaughter.
That was exactly their argument, trying to make the killing seem like a panicked reaction, not a planned, hate-fueled murder.
Wait, what about the evidence? The 28 stab wounds, the knife he brought, the Adam Wathan stuff. His own messages about baiting gay men. How did that fit with a sudden panic attack?
It didn't fit at all, and the prosecution hit back hard on those contradictions. Prosecutor Jennifer Walker was forceful, basically saying the only predator in that park was Sam Woodward. He was the one who showed up armed with a 6-inch knife. The whole attempt to paint Blaze as the aggressor was portrayed as just a desperate, unfounded legal tactic.
And did they ever find that supposed photo Woodward claimed Blaze took?
No, that was crucial. Despite Woodward's claim, forensic analysis found absolutely no such photo on any device. It simply didn't exist.
So the prosecution's case rested heavily on showing that pattern of hate and preparation.
Absolutely. They pointed to the Adam Wathan membership, those disturbing baiting messages, the knife picture with the "murder isn't boring" caption. All of it painted a picture of a targeted, planned attack motivated by prejudice, not some spontaneous crime of passion triggered by a non-existent photo.
And they also had to prove the anti-Semitism part of the hate crime, right? Since Blaze was Jewish.
Yes, that was vital for the full enhancement. To establish that link, Blaze's mother, Jean Pepper, gave incredibly important and no doubt difficult testimony. She spoke about their family life, confirming they were practicing Jews. This legally established Blaze's identity as a member of a group specifically targeted by Woodward's neo-Nazi ideology.
Connecting Woodward's general hate directly to Blaze himself.
Exactly. It formally linked the killer's ideology to the victim's identity, satisfying that element of the hate crime charge.
So the whole trial really boiled down to this fundamental question. Was this a personal tragedy born of panic and confusion, maybe fueled by Woodward's own issues?
Or was it a calculated act of terror carried out because of a deeply ingrained, radicalized hatred for gay and Jewish people?
A stark choice for the jury.
Absolutely. And the sheer length of the trial, the resources dedicated to proving that ideological hate, it really showed how significant this case was. Not just for the Bernsteins, but for prosecuting this kind of extremist violence that tries to hide as just an individual crime.
Okay, so the trial wraps up after nearly 3 months, from April to July 2024. It must have been absolutely grueling for Blaze's parents. Listening to months of graphic details and then having to hear the defense repeatedly suggest their son was somehow the aggressor, the one responsible.
Unimaginable. The sources say Blaze's mother often had to leave the courtroom during parts of the defense's case, just too painful.
And there was another layer of trauma mentioned, too, for Blaze's grandmother.
Yes, a really poignant and awful detail. Blaze's grandmother is a Holocaust survivor.
Oh, my goodness.
So for her, sitting in that courtroom, witnessing the same kind of vicious, anti-Semitic and homophobic hatred that defined the horrors of her youth, now being presented as the motive for her own grandson's murder. The sources described it as a murderous echo from her past. Just profoundly traumatic.
I can't even fathom that.
Yeah.
So July 3rd, 2024, 6.5 long years after Blaze was killed, the jury comes back.
They do. And they deliberated for only about 8 hours.
8 hours after a 3-month trial. That seems fast.
It suggests the evidence presented by the prosecution was pretty overwhelming in their eyes.
And the verdict.
Guilty. The jury found Samuel Woodward guilty of first-degree murder. And crucially, they also found the hate crime enhancement to be true.
Both parts. First-degree murder and the hate crime.
Both. The district attorney, Todd Spitzer, put it plainly after the verdict. Blaze was murdered because he was gay and Jewish. Simple as that.
So the jury completely rejected the defense's panic or manslaughter argument.
Decisively, the first-degree conviction shut that down entirely.
And with that hate crime enhancement found true, the sentence was basically set, wasn't it?
It was mandatory. On November 15, 2024, Samuel Woodward was formally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Life without parole. He's currently in prison, right?
Yes. As of 2025, he's listed as being at the California Medical Facility.
That sentence, life without parole, it's the ultimate legal rejection of the defense's narrative.
It absolutely is. It legally confirmed that his actions were driven by that radicalized hatred, not by some kind of confused panic or provocation. And that verdict, that sentence, it stands as a really important judicial precedent. It offers some measure of justice, acknowledging the specific targeting of LGBTQ+ and Jewish individuals by these extremist elements.
It sends a message that you can't use radicalization as an excuse for murder.
Precisely.
But beyond the legal outcome, the legacy of Blaze Bernstein, it's actually become something incredibly positive, hasn't it? Thanks to his parents.
It really has. It's perhaps the most moving part of this whole story. Gideon and Jean Bernstein, they chose a path other than bitterness or just grief. They founded the Blaze Forward kindness movement.
Blaze Forward, playing on his name.
Exactly. The movement is all about promoting positivity, inspiring people to perform random acts of kindness. It's a direct, conscious, almost defiant response to the calculated hatred that took their son's life.
That takes incredible strength.
It's extraordinary resilience. The whole idea is simple. Use Blaze's memory to add more light to the world. They encourage people to do good deeds, pay for someone's coffee, help out a neighbor, write a thank you note, basically. Affording kindness in Blaze's name.
And the place where it happened, Borrego Park, it's been transformed too, hasn't it?
It really has in a spiritual sense. That park, the scene of such horror, is now filled with hundreds and hundreds of hand-painted stones.
The stones.
Yeah, left there by strangers, people who've heard Blaze's story and travel there, sometimes from all over the world, to leave a painted rock.
What's on them?
Messages of tolerance, love, light, support. It's turned this place, this crime scene, into a living memorial.
Wow. That's powerful.
It is. The spontaneous grassroots memorial, it's kind of transformed Blaze into this symbol of resilience, a kind of martyr, as one source put it, for the LGBTQ plus community, for anyone targeted by extremism. It's like a physical embodiment of that idea of tikkun olam, repairing the world, directly challenging the darkness of groups like Atomwaffen with these tangible acts of community, love, and remembrance.
So thinking about the listeners, the learners,
Mm-hmm.
what are the key takeaways from this incredibly tragic case?
Well, I think it offers some really profound lessons, especially if you're following modern security issues, extremism. It starkly highlights that even if specific neo-Nazi groups like Atomwaffen seem to dissolve or go underground or just rebrand online, the underlying threat, the ideology, it remains incredibly potent.
It's not just about one group's name.
Not at all. And the case really demonstrates this deadly intersection. You have online radicalization meeting personal conflicts, maybe issues like sexual repression, and then it's all compounded by this extreme violent ideology. The results can be devastating.
That forces you to recognize these aren't just fringe ideas online. They have real-world violent consequences.
Exactly. And maybe one final thought. The sheer length of time it took, those 2,364 days, the Bernstein family waited for that final verdict. It confirms a hard truth. The fight against this kind of ideologically motivated hate, it's often long, it's incredibly painful for victims and their families.
Right.
But justice, in this specific case, ultimately affirmed the value of identity, the truth of the motive, and delivered a clear rejection of that extremism.
Thank you, detectives, for joining us in this episode of Global Crime Files. We'll see you again in the next case. Until then, keep following us, and as always, stay curious and stay vigilant.